Right now, your mind may be replaying an old conversation you wish had gone differently, or perhaps it is meticulously cataloguing all the things you failed to finish today. Maybe you are lying here, your body heavy and tired, yet your thoughts remain wide awake, pacing back and forth like a sentry that refuses to stand down. You feel this persistent, aching pressure to hold yourself together, as if the moment you relax, some vital part of your life might simply unravel. It is a lonely, exhausting way to carry yourself through the day, and now that the world has finally gone quiet, that exhaustion is finding you. You are in a safe place. There is no performance required of you here. You do not need to be the person who has all the answers. And you certainly do not need to be the one who carries the weight of the future for everyone else. If it feels right, let your body settle deeper into the warmth of your blankets. Feel the texture of the pillow beneath your head, supporting the weight of your thoughts so your neck does not have to. Let the dim, silver light of the moon outside filter through the curtains, casting soft shadows that move with the slow rhythm of the night. There is nowhere else you need to be. You are not late for your rest, and you are not behind on your growth. You are simply here. Maybe you can hear the faint, distant sounds of the night, the quiet settling of the house, the rhythm of the wind, the steady, reliable beating of your own heart. Each breath is an invitation to let go of just a little bit more of the armor you have been wearing. You do not have to solve your whole life tonight. You do not have to fix your past or perfectly map your future before you are allowed to drift into sleep. Maybe you have felt this too. The nagging, deep-seated feeling that you are behind in life, that you should have bloomed by now, and that the quiet stretches of your existence are wasted time. You look at your own path and see only the soil, the weeds, and the slow, unseen work, while you compare it to the sudden, vibrant flowers you see in the lives of others. You believe that if you just tried a little harder, if you just pulled on your own stems with a bit more intensity, you could finally force yourself to be what you think you ought to be. But tonight, we will sit with a different truth. You are not broken. What you are feeling is not failure. It is simply the result of a heart that has been trying to force a bloom when it should have been tending the roots. You are safe enough to soften. You can allow your jaw to unclench, your shoulders to drop away from your ears, and your hands to rest open and unburdened. There is nothing you need to anticipate. There is nothing you need to defend. The very thing you are fighting may be the doorway to peace. We often think that we must maintain a state of constant mental monitoring to ensure our own progress. We walk through the seasons of our lives like a gardener obsessed with the clock, terrified that if we stop checking on the seeds, they will never sprout. But tonight, we will learn that the friction you feel, that tightness, that sense of being behind, is not a sign that you are failing. It is the sign that you are forgetting the wisdom of the seasons. The mind does not become peaceful because you finally force it to be silent. It becomes peaceful when you stop treating your own growth as a race you are currently losing. This is the paradox that we will explore together. The relief you are searching for is not found by forcing the bloom with more effort. It is found by realizing that you have been trying to command the sprout, when the true work is simply to be the soil. Perhaps tonight, nothing needs to be finished. Perhaps tonight, it is enough to finally stop running from your own rhythm. Right now, you are safe enough to let go. You have done enough for today. You have carried enough for today. And whatever is waiting for you in the morning will be met by a version of you that has finally allowed itself to be restored, nourished, and steady. As we sit together in this quiet, I want you to know that you are not being judged for the thoughts that wander through your mind. You are not being graded on how well you can let go. Even noticing that your mind is searching for a way to stay in control or on schedule is a form of success. Even realizing that you are holding your breath is a victory. We are going to walk through a story, And in that story, we will find a mirror for the things you have been feeling. We will see how our young student once stood exactly where you are standing at the edge of his own impatience, and how he eventually found the peace of the orchard. But for now, just rest. Let the words wash over you like the sound of a soft breeze through the trees. You do not need to analyze these words. You do not need to hold on to them. Just let them be a gentle companion while you settle into the soft, dark comfort of your room. You are safe. You are exactly where you need to be. And you have the permission to let everything go, just for a little while, and simply exist. Is there any part of your body that is still holding on? Just notice it. Send a little bit of kindness to that place. Let it soften. You are doing perfectly fine. You are already exactly who you are meant to be. And the peace you are looking for, the peace that feels so far away, is actually closer than your next breath. It is waiting for you, right beneath the noise, right beneath the constant urge to become, and right beneath the fear of being out of season. You have been trying to protect yourself by rushing the harvest, but the life inside you is asking for room to rest. That tightness you feel in your chest, that sense of urgency, it is not an indicator that you have done something wrong. It is the pressure of a natural cycle being interrupted by a mind that has forgotten how to wait. And you don't need to force that cycle to change. You don't need to shout at the earth to grow. You only need to relax enough to let the tending of the soil do its work, and trust that there is something deep, patient, and vibrant waiting to be revealed in its own proper time. As you lie here, your body heavy and sinking into the mattress, I want you to feel the space around you. The room is quiet. The demands of the day have completely faded into the distance. The emails, the texts, the expectations of others, the imaginary finish lines, they are all outside this room, and the door is closed. You are entirely safe to just be the breathing body on this bed. In a moment, this story will begin to reveal itself. We will follow a young student who spent his whole life trying to command the bamboo, only to find that his very anxiety was the wall he was building against his own growth. But until then, just rest. Feel the weight of your own existence, supported by the earth, held by the night, and allowed to be exactly as you are. You do not need to be a finished product. You do not need to be a perfectly bloomed flower. You are a process. You are a movement. You are a part of a beautiful, changing world that knows exactly how to transition from the dormancy of winter to the vitality of spring. Let yourself be carried by that wisdom for just a little longer in this quiet, holy dark. In a valley where the air felt perpetually thick, with the scent of damp earth and coming rain, there lived a student named Kenji. He had dedicated his entire young life to the cultivation of a sacred bamboo grove, a task his master had bestowed upon him with the simple instruction to help the bamboo find its height. Kenji was a person of intense, restless energy. He believed that if he was not working, he was failing. He believed that if he was not actively pushing, nothing of value would ever come to pass. Each morning, before the sun had even touched the peaks of the surrounding mountains, Kenji was already in the grove. He carried buckets of water from the stream, pouring them over the young sprouts with a frantic, desperate precision. He spent his afternoons pulling away every weed, his fingers raw and stained with mud, convinced that any speck of wild growth was a threat to his success. But the bamboo remained short. It remained stubborn and thin, its stalks barely rising above the tall grasses that bordered the grove. Every evening, Kenji would return to the master's porch, his body trembling with the sheer exhaustion of his own anxiety. He would sit before the old man, who was usually found sitting in the stillness of the shade, watching the patterns of the light as the afternoon deepened. The master would offer Kenji a cup of tea, the steam rising in lazy, graceful spirals, but Kenji would barely touch it. He would recount the hours of labor, the buckets hauled, the weeds pulled, his voice tight with the frustration of a man who felt he was running out of time. Master, Kenji would say, his hands gripping his knees so hard, the knuckles turned white. I do everything I am told. I water, I weed, I guard. But the grove does not grow. It is stunted. I am failing my duty. The master would simply nod, his eyes fixed on a distant bird, tracing a line across the sky. You are working very hard, Kenji. Perhaps the bamboo is tired of your help. Kenji did not understand. He assumed the master was joking, or perhaps testing his resolve, so the next day he worked even harder. He brought even more water. He cleared the earth until the soil was smooth and hard, devoid of anything but the bamboo itself. He began to shout at the young sprouts, commanding them to stretch, to reach, to fulfill the promise of the grove. He became thin and gaunt, his sleep haunted by visions of a stunted, withered bamboo forest. Perhaps you know this feeling, the feeling of forced growth. You are looking at the landscape of your own life, your career, your inner healing, your relationships. And you are convinced that if you stop pulling on the stems, if you stop worrying, if you stop managing every tiny detail, the whole thing will simply stop growing, or worse, collapse entirely. You feel that you are the only one holding the structure of your life together, and the weight of that responsibility is pressing the air out of your lungs. You look at others and you see them blooming, and you wonder why your own season feels so long, so cold, and so stagnant. One afternoon, the heat was particularly stifling. Kenji had been working for 10 hours without pause. His skin was scorched, his throat was parched, and his spirit was brittle. He collapsed near the center of the grove, his face pressed into the dirt, sobbing. He was overwhelmed by a sudden, sharp realization that he had no more strength left to give. He was done, he was finished. As he lay there in the quiet of the grove, he heard the soft, shuffling sound of sandals on the path. The master had walked out from the shade. He did not come over to offer a lecture. He did not bring a bucket of water. He simply sat down on a flat rock a few paces away and began to slowly peel a small local fruit, the juice dripping onto the earth. Kenji lifted his head, his eyes blurry with tears. "I cannot do it," he whispered. "I cannot make it grow. I have tried everything. I have been a perfect gardener, yet the grove is dead." The master took a slow bite of the fruit and chewed thoughtfully. "Kenji," he said, not looking at the bamboo, but looking directly at the patch of earth where Kenji had been scraping the soil smooth. "You have been very busy trying to command the sprout, but have you forgotten how to be the soil?" Kenji blinked, his mind too tired to pass the riddle. "I don't know what you mean." The master pointed to the earth beneath Kenji's hands. "You are so busy pulling on the stalks, hoping to force them to reach for the sky, that you have compacted the ground until it is as hard as stone. You have poured so much water that the earth has no chance to breathe. You are working with your fear, not with the bamboo." The master reached into the folds of his robe and pulled out a small, simple object, a rusted iron trowel worn down from years of use. He leaned forward and handed it to Kenji. "Tonight, do not water," the master instructed. "Do not pull. Take this trowel and go to the very edge of the grove where you have not yet cleared the weeds. Simply loosen the earth. Let the air get into the places that have been ignored. Let the ground breathe. Then leave it alone. Trust the earth. It knows how to be the soil even if you have forgotten." Kenji took the trowel. It was cool and heavy in his hand. He went to the edge of the grove where the wild clover and tough grasses had taken hold. He knelt there, the soil damp and fragrant. He began to loosen the earth, not with the frantic, jagged movements of his previous labor, but with a slow, deliberate rhythm. He pushed the trowel in, turned the earth over, and left it loose and open. He found that beneath the surface there was a dark, rich life he had completely overlooked because he had been so focused on the stalks above. He worked for an hour, and then, as the moon began to rise, he stopped. He looked at the patch of loosened earth. He felt a strange, new sensation in his chest, a quiet, expansive hollow where the panic had been. For the first time, he was not trying to produce a result. He was not trying to force a bloom. He was simply tending the conditions. He realized then that his anxiety had been a kind of drought. By being so desperate for the outcome, he had effectively shut down the very space where growth could occur. He had been trying to build a harvest out of his own impatience. That night, Kenji did not dream of stunted bamboo. He slept for the first time in months. When he woke, he did not rush to the grove. He spent the morning sitting on the porch, watching the light change, just as the master did. He felt a profound, unsettling peace. He realized that the bamboo would grow when the time was right, according to its own nature, not according to his terrified schedule. He didn't become a magically perfect master that day. He still felt the flickers of the old urge to rush, the old habit of measuring his worth by the height of the stalks. But every time that feeling rose, he would feel the phantom weight of the rusted trowel in his hand. He would stop. He would take a breath. He would remind himself that he was not the commander of the grove, but a partner to the soil. You see, dear friend, as you lie here, maybe you can feel the pressure of your own pulling. You have been trying to stretch your own life, trying to drag yourself into a bloom that you aren't ready for yet, and it is exhausting you. You feel that if you stop working, if you stop worrying, the whole garden of your existence will wither. But what if the exhaustion you feel is not a sign of failure? What if it is a sign that you have been trying to do the work of the soil while you are meant to be the seed? You are allowed to stop pulling on your own stems. You are allowed to be in the loosening phase, where the work isn't about height, but about aeration, about letting your life breathe, about letting the ground of your being become soft and receptive again. There is a quiet, hidden labor in the darkness of the earth. We are so obsessed with the green shoot, the thing that shows, the thing that others can see, that we forget the silent, subterranean work of building roots. When you feel stuck, or when you feel you are not making progress, you are often in this deeper, root-building phase. You are not failing. You are building the depth necessary to support the height that is inevitably coming, in its own time, in its own way. But this requires a kind of trust that the modern world does not teach. It requires the trust to stop checking the sprout. It requires the trust to let the earth be what it is, without constantly demanding a change of state. In a moment, we will look at how this ancient quiet trust can translate into the way you carry your own heart through the noisy world. But for now, let yourself rest in this feeling of being loosened. Let the tension in your hands relax, just as Kenji finally let go of his frantic grip on the stalks. You don't have to be tall right now. You don't have to be impressive right now. You only have to be the soil, soft and open, ready to receive whatever the coming season brings. The night is vast. It has plenty of time for you. You don't need to finish your growth by morning. The moon knows how to wax and wane without panic, and you too are allowed to exist in cycles. Rest now. Let the ground of your being be loose, and let the quiet work of your own nature happen in the safety of this peace. You are safe, you are held, and you are already growing even when you cannot see it. When Kenji stood there in the quiet of the grove, his hands still covered in the rich, dark soil he had finally dared to touch, he was seeing more than just the bamboo. He was seeing the wreckage of his own impatience. He had spent his life treating his inner growth like a production line, something to be managed, measured, and forced into existence through sheer, stubborn willpower. He had treated his own heart like an enemy that refused to cooperate, never realizing that by trying to command the sprout, he was only ensuring that the earth itself would remain hard, dry, and unresponsive. As you lie here tonight, safe in the dim light of your room, you might recognize the weight of Kenji's anxiety in your own heart. How many times have you treated your identity like a crop that must be harvested before the season is ready? We all carry our own versions of this frantic gardening. We carry the garden of the one who must always be productive. We carry the garden of the one who must always show progress. We carry the garden of the one who must have everything figured out, even when we are tired, even when we are lost, even when we are hurting. We believe that if we just push hard enough, if we just monitor our own growth with enough intensity, we will be safe from the uncertainty of being a living, breathing human being. But Buddhist wisdom gently reminds us to look at what that constant monitoring is actually doing to our spirits. The Buddha spoke of a profound truth about human suffering. He taught that in life, there is the first arrow, and then there is the second arrow. The first arrow is the natural pain of being human. It is the simple, undeniable fact that we have seasons of dormancy, that we have periods where we feel like we aren't moving forward, and that we have moments where our growth is hidden deep beneath the surface. For Kenji, the first arrow was simply the time it took for the bamboo to reach its maturity. That is just life. It is not a failure. It is the natural consequence of being a living, evolving soul for you. The first arrow might be the discomfort of not knowing what comes next, the quiet grief of letting go of a plan that didn't work out, or the vulnerability of admitting that you are still in process. The first arrow is what life brings to our doorstep, whether we are prepared or not. But the suffering, the heavy, paralyzing anxiety that kept Kenji pacing the grove in the dark, the same anxiety that keeps you awake at night, pacing the corridors of your own mind, that is the second arrow. The second arrow is what the mind adds to the first. The second arrow is the story that says, because I am not blooming yet, I am a failure. The second arrow is the voice that screams, if I don't force this to happen, I will be left behind. The second arrow is the frantic energy we spend trying to control the uncontrollable, to pull on our own stems when we should be tending our own roots. Kenji shot a second arrow into his own heart by demanding that the bamboo reach for the sky on his schedule, when the very nature of the grove was to be patient. He added the burden of his own judgment to the already challenging task of simply being. When Buddhist teachings speak of attachment, they are not just talking about holding on to material things. In the landscape of your emotions, attachment is that tight, anxious feeling in your chest that says everything must go exactly according to my plan, or I cannot be okay. It is the rigidity that refuses to let life unfold, because we are terrified of the space where our control ends. We become so attached to the bloom, to the final result, the finished project, the settled life, that we would rather suffer through a drought of our own making than risk the vulnerability of simply being the soil. And when we hear the word craving, we might think of wanting objects, but in this context, craving is the desperate, frantic desire for a permanent, unchanging result. It is the mind's obsession with a future that doesn't exist yet, an obsession so strong that it completely blinds us to the beauty and grace of who we are right now. We crave the certainty of success so intensely that we make ourselves sick with the effort of trying to force a harvest that isn't ready. But this story is not telling us to stop wanting to grow. It is not asking us to become careless, or to abandon our goals, or to give up on the things that give our lives meaning. It is not saying that your desire to be your best self is wrong. It is showing us something quieter. It is showing us how to stop adding a second wound to the first. When the master asked Kenji if he had forgotten how to be the soil, he was teaching him about mindfulness. In our modern lives, we hear that word often, but its true meaning is sometimes lost. Mindfulness is simply the ability to see the pulling, the panic, the rush, the self-judgment without being blinded by it. Mindfulness is realizing that just because your mind hands you an urgent, suffocating story about how far behind you are, you do not have to believe it, and you certainly do not have to act on it. You can become the quiet space of awareness. Awareness is the vast, open presence that can notice your discomfort without becoming your discomfort. It is the part of you that can watch the frantic, buzzing energy of your anxious mind and say, I see you trying to protect me by forcing the harvest, but I do not have to live inside this anxiety tonight. Think of how much energy it takes to maintain a constant state of forced growth. It requires constant monitoring, constant justification, and constant vigilance against the truth of your own natural cycle. It demands that you stay in the garden of your own mind, pulling at your own life, while the world itself sits waiting for your authentic presence. No wonder you are so tired, dear friend. Fighting your own rhythm by trying to override it with force is the most exhausting work in the world. But what happens when you introduce the wisdom of impermanence into that exhaustion? Impermanence is the gentle, radical reminder that nothing is meant to be forced. You are not a machine, you are not a factory product, you are a part of a natural cycle. Because your life is constantly shifting, you have the capacity to handle whatever season you are in, even the ones that feel quiet, cold, or dark. You do not need to be in a constant state of visible bloom to be safe. You only need to be the person who is capable of tending to the soil, one moment at a time. Letting go, then, is not an act of surrender to chaos. It does not mean you are losing your drive. Letting go means releasing the effort of trying to command the sprout. It means opening the tight, white-knuckled grip you have on your outcomes. It means trusting that there is something deep, patient, and capable waiting to reveal itself when you stop hardening the earth around your own roots. When you learn to let go of the need to force your own bloom, you make room for compassion. And compassion is not pity. Compassion is the profound, quiet strength to meet your own human evolution without turning it into self-punishment. It is the ability to look at the parts of yourself that feel unready, unfinished, or in between, and offer them the same gentle, unhurried presence that the Master offered Kenji. You are allowed to be in the middle of your waiting. You are allowed to be vulnerable. You are allowed to not know exactly how your life will look by the time the season turns. Right now, as you lie here, your breathing slow and the room quiet around you, can you feel the difference between the tight, hard earth of your anxiety and the feeling of the loose, receptive soil? The anxiety feels like a fist. It lives in the jaw, in the raised shoulders, in the way you hold your breath to keep the schedule stable. It is always looking at the horizon, always wondering if it is enough, but the soil feels soft and grounded. It trusts the rain. It knows that life is wide enough to hold you, and it does not need to force a result to know it is worthy of existence. You do not need to force yourself to understand all of this at once. You do not need to suddenly become a master gardener of your own soul tonight. Even the desire to let go perfectly, or to choose freedom with absolute certainty, is just another weed you are trying to pull. You can lay that down too. Nothing is required of you right now. The night does not ask you to prove your growth, and the dark room does not care if you have reached your harvest or if you are still just settling your roots. The night only offers you a place to rest. When we begin to see our need for forced growth, not as a badge of honor, but simply as a habit of the mind, a way of trying to feel secure in an insecure world, the heavy burden of having to be on schedule begins to evaporate. You realize that the stagnation you feared was not an empty failure, but a spacious, welcoming period of preparation, and when you stop fearing the quiet, you find the freedom to finally be real. Your path is your path. It cannot be predicted by your own terrified need for milestones, and it cannot be protected by pulling on your own stems to judge your natural rhythm against some imaginary, industrial speed is to shoot that second arrow directly into your own spirit. Tonight, we are pulling that arrow out. We are gently laying it on the ground. As your body softens into the mattress, as the air moves gently in and out of your lungs, give yourself permission to exist outside of the need to produce. Just for tonight, there is no harvest to track and no growth to monitor. There is only the inhale and the exhale. There is only the soft, cooling presence of the night. In a moment, This teaching will become even more personal. We will begin to look inward, using a gentle practice to help the mind actually experience this release, not just understand it. We will gather the weeds of your self-judgment and find a safe, quiet place to set them down. But for now, simply let these words wash over you. Allow yourself to be held by the stillness, knowing that you are exactly where you are meant to be, and that you are already equipped with everything you need to navigate your own seasons. You are doing perfectly fine. You are already exactly who you are meant to be, even if that self is still waiting, still rooting, and still learning how to trust the soil. And as we continue, you will find that it becomes easier and easier to leave the pulling behind and rest in the warmth of the present moment. If it feels right, let us take a moment to bring this quiet understanding down from the busy, exhausted mind and into the heavy, resting body. You have been carrying the weight of that frantic gardening for so long, and your body has been keeping the score of that constant, anxious need to command your own growth. You do not need to force anything to change right now. We are simply going to offer your body the same gentle, unhurried presence that the Master offered Kenji. Begin by just noticing the space you are in. Feel the soft weight of the blanket covering you, holding you gently against the mattress. Feel the texture of the pillow beneath your head, supporting the weight of your thoughts so that your neck does not have to. There is nowhere else you need to be in this exact moment. You are not late for sleep. You are not behind on your evolution. You are simply here. If it feels comfortable for you, take a slow, quiet breath in through your nose. Do not force the breath to be perfectly deep or unnaturally long. Just notice the cool air entering, filling the space in your chest. And as you let it out, feel your shoulders sink just a fraction of an inch deeper into the bed. Let us do that again, without any expectation. A soft, welcoming breath in, and a slow, gentle sigh out. Notice the muscles around your eyes. These are the muscles that squint into the future, always searching for how you should appear, always scanning for whether you are blooming fast enough. If you can, invite those tiny muscles to soften. Let the skin of your forehead become smooth. Let your eyes rest deeply in their sockets, knowing there is nothing they need to project tonight. The world does not need you to be a perfectly opened flower, it only needs you to be alive. Now, bring your awareness down to your jaw. Have you been clenching it? Have you been biting down on the pressure of your own need to be perfect? You do not need to hold your identity together with the tension in your jaw. Let your teeth part slightly. Let your tongue rest softly. Feel the relief of allowing your face to simply exist, unguarded and open to the quiet night. As your breath continues its own natural, effortless rhythm, perhaps you can begin to notice the feeling of that frantic pulling in your mind. You might feel it as a tightness in your chest, or a nervous flutter in your stomach, or a general buzzing energy in your limbs. It is that familiar, heavy pattern of the mind, the pattern that whispers, "I must be further along than I am, or I am not enough." When you notice this feeling, do not push it away. Do not judge yourself for feeling it. Remember, Buddhist wisdom teaches us that suffering grows when we add resistance to our pain. If we fight the urge to be ahead or successful, we only build a stronger cage for our own growth. Instead, see if you can just name the pattern. You might gently say to yourself, inside your own mind, "Ah, there is the gardener. There is the feeling of needing to force the bamboo." Just naming it gives you space. It reminds you that this feeling is not who you are. It is simply a visitor that has stopped by, carrying a heavy, rusted trowel. You do not have to invite the visitor to move in, and you do not have to slam the door in its face. You can simply nod to it and let it stand there, watching as it slowly realizes you are no longer going to follow it into the grove to shout at the earth. Now, in the quiet theater of your mind, I invite you to leave the grove of your anxieties. Step away from the buckets of water and the jagged, restless weeds. Imagine that you are walking out into that soft, warm edge of the orchard where the earth is still wild and beautiful. The air here is so fresh, smelling of wet soil and the coming spring. The moonlight filters down in pale silver ribbons, illuminating the path just enough for you to see your way. You are entirely safe here. The demands of your harvest cannot reach you in this deep, quiet place. Imagine walking up to that sturdy, ancient patch of earth you have been neglecting because you were too busy pulling on the stalks. Feel the cool, grounded presence of the forest standing around you. You are holding your worry, the one that represents who you think you should be, who you are terrified of failing, and who you are exhausted by maintaining. Take one specific anxiety that has been troubling you recently, perhaps the pressure to be more successful, the pressure to be the strong one, or simply the heavy ache of feeling like you are stagnating. Hold that anxiety gently in your mind. Do not try to solve it. Just look at it. Now, imagine taking all the frantic, rushing energy of that worry, all the loud, crashing noise of trying to force yourself to grow, and distill it down. Watch it shrink and soften until it becomes nothing more than a small, light object. Perhaps it is a smooth river stone or a single dry trowel from the grove. Hold it in your open palm. Feel its weight. You have been clutching this worry, this demand, as if your life depended on the grip itself. But look at your hand. It is tired, it is aching. Imagine standing in the warm, quiet edge of the orchard. You don't feel any pressure to be tall. You don't feel any need to be impressive. And for the first time, you realize you don't have to carry the trowel to prove that you are growing. Gently, slowly, open your fingers. Let the worry, the stone, the tool, slip from your palm. Watch it fall to the soft, damp earth. You are no longer holding it. You are no longer responsible for carrying the success of the grove, while the life beneath it is still rooting. Listen to the silence that follows. There is a vast, beautiful space where the worry used to be. In that space, there is no need for buckets or frantic labor. There is only the cool night air, the smell of the damp soil, and the deep, abiding peace of the earth. If another worry rises up, if the mind tries to tell you that you must hurry back to the grove, simply notice it, distill it down, let it gather, let it be seen, and then let it go. Watch the image of the frantic gardener dissolve entirely, replaced by the feeling of your own shoulders finally dropping, finally letting go. The fear of being stunted is being washed away by the simple, steady act of breathing. You are not a bamboo shoot that needs to be pulled. You are a living, breathing person, and you were built for this space of rest. If your mind wanders away from the edge of the orchard, that is perfectly fine. The mind is designed to wander. There is no need to be harsh with yourself. Even noticing that your mind has wandered is a beautiful moment of awareness. When you realize you have returned to the buckets and the weeds, just gently, softly, take your own hand and walk yourself back to the soft earth, back to the open palm, back to the trust. There is no need to force this practice. There is no need to achieve perfect stillness tonight. You do not have to magically heal all your impatience in one evening. The healing we are doing here is much quieter, much slower. We are simply practicing the act of loosening the soil. Feel your body again, resting in your bed. Feel the rise and fall of your chest. With every exhale, imagine that you are releasing just a tiny fraction of your need to be blooming. You are handing the harvest over to the cycles. The cycles are vast enough to hold it for you. You might place a hand over your own heart, if that feels comforting, just to feel the steady, reliable rhythm of your own life. Your heart is not worried about the harvest. It is beating at its own perfect pace, asking nothing of you, demanding no flawless performance, requiring no forced growth. It is simply keeping you alive, moment by moment, in a state of unconditional support. Let the image of the orchard edge gently fade, knowing that you can return to it whenever you are ready. It is always there, waiting inside you, a place of quiet refuge when the world becomes too loud. For now, simply rest in the feeling of being supported. Your bed is holding you. The earth is holding the foundation of your home. You are anchored. You are safe. The terrible urgency to be a finished flower has lifted, leaving behind a soft, spacious quiet. In a moment, we will journey into another story, one that takes this understanding even deeper, exploring what happens when we finally trust the quiet work that happens in the dark. But let yourself linger here for as long as you like. Breathe, soften. You are not failing, you are simply learning how to trust the soil again. Years later, in the same valley where Kenji had once broken his trowel against the earth, there lived an elderly monk named Elara. She was not a student, but she carried the same restless spirit within her. Elara had spent her entire life as the master of the dormant orchard, a place of immense reputation. She was renowned for the strength of her fruit, the height of her trees, and the iron-willed discipline she brought to every harvest. She had crafted an identity out of her mastery, and she wore that identity like a suit of armor that never quite allowed her to breathe. But the seasons had begun to turn against her. A great, bitter drought had gripped the mountainside, and for 3 long years the orchard had not borne a single piece of fruit. The village below, dependent on her harvest, grew anxious and vocal. They stood at the orchard gate, their voices rising in the heat, demanding that she use harsh chemical fertilizers to force the trees, or prune the branches so aggressively that the trees would be shocked into a desperate, final production. They wanted results, and they wanted them immediately. They wanted her to be the master they knew, the one who could command the earth to produce. Elara felt the crushing weight of their expectations, and more painfully, she felt the familiar, cold panic in her own chest. She felt that if she didn't provide the fruit, she was failing. She felt that if the orchard failed, she was nothing. She spent her nights pacing the dry, cracked rows of trees, her fingers trembling, her mind screaming that she had to do something, anything, to maintain the image of the master of the orchard. She was terrified that if she let the orchard be fallow, she would have to admit she was not a master at all, but only a person caught in a drought. Perhaps you know this feeling, the feeling of being caught in the drought of your own life, where your efforts are not yielding the results you expected, and you are terrified that your inability to produce is a direct reflection of your own worth. You feel the pressure of the people around you, the weight of their demands, and you begin to harden yourself, trying to force a harvest from a season that is clearly meant for rest. You are so busy defending your title as the one who succeeds that you are missing the simple, holy reality of the drought itself. One night, a violent, unseasonable storm swept over the mountain. The wind whipped through the orchard with a sound like tearing silk. In the morning, Elara walked out to find that a great, ancient pear tree, one of her oldest and most prized, had been snapped in half by the force of the gale. Its heart was exposed to the light of the morning, and it was rotted through. The wood was black and soft. She stood before the broken tree, expecting to feel the familiar surge of grief or the need to fix the damage. But as she touched the rotted wood, she felt something else, a strange, profound clarity. The tree hadn't snapped because of the storm. The storm had only revealed that the tree had been hollowed out by its own internal struggle to grow too quickly, to produce when it needed to be still. It had been fighting the drought for 3 years, trying to force a fruit that its roots could not support. Elara realized that she had been doing the exact same thing. She had been trying to grow pear trees in a season of drought, using the tools of a master to solve a mystery of the earth. She didn't rush to clear the wood. She didn't call the villagers to prune the remaining trees. She walked to the gate, and for the first time in her life, she did not try to explain herself. She did not defend her mastery. She looked at the anxious villagers and said, simply, the orchard is not failing. It is building depth. We must let it sleep. She turned back into the orchard and did something that shocked even herself. She laid her pruning shears on the ground. She took her heavy, leather apron the symbol of her constant, restless work, and hung it on a low branch, leaving it there for the wind to take. She did not fix the orchard. She went to the center of the grove, where the earth was hardest, and she sat. She sat for the entire day. She did not water, she did not weed, she did not even look at the trees to see if they were thirsty. She sat and watched the clouds, and she allowed herself to feel the crushing shame of not producing. She sat with the fear of what the villagers thought. She sat with the terrifying emptiness of no longer being the master. And because she did not run from the fear, because she did not try to fix the state of her own heart, the fear eventually lost its sharp, stinging edge. It became simply a feeling. She realized that the drought was not a punishment for her past mistakes, and it was not a trial for her to overcome. It was just a season. The earth was allowed to have seasons where it held nothing back, and she, as a part of the earth, was allowed to have seasons where she held nothing back either. Ilara didn't become a magically different woman. She didn't suddenly wake up the next morning with no anxiety left in her bones. But she did change in one subtle, powerful way. She stopped treating her own life like an industrial machine. When the anxiety of not doing enough would rise up, she would no longer sprint to the tools. She would go to the broken pear tree, sit in the shade of its remaining stump, and breathe. She would feel the sensation of the need to produce, and she would acknowledge it, like an old friend who had forgotten how to be quiet. She would sit with it, feel the heat of her own desire to be masterful, and then she would consciously, deliberately, choose to do nothing. She would watch a bee move from blossom to blossom, and she would remind herself that she was not responsible for the entire orchard. She was only responsible for her own awareness. She was only responsible for the breath she was taking in that very moment. She stopped treating her thoughts as commands. If her mind told her she was a failure, she didn't argue with it, and she didn't let it become the truth of her existence. She just noted the thought, like a cloud passing over the mountain, and she kept her feet firmly on the ground. As you lie here, resting in the safety of your own bed, feel the weight of your own dormancy. You have been pacing the orchard of your life, terrified that if you are not visibly growing, you are losing the game. You have been neglecting the beauty of your own roots because you are so busy looking for the fruit. But you don't need to be a master of the orchard to be worthy of peace. You don't need to be the one who produces the harvest for everyone else to be allowed to exist. You are allowed to be in your own version of the drought. You are allowed to be in a season where the visible growth is thin, where the harvest is absent, and where your only task is to hold your ground and wait with patience. The drought is not a sign of your ruin. It is a sign that you are being asked to build depth, to build a root system that can survive the storms that will inevitably come later. You don't need to force the bloom. You only need to tend the soil of your own attention. The transformation does not come from suddenly becoming flawless or fearless. It comes from the subtle shift of realizing that you are not the one who creates the harvest. The harvest is a partnership between your tending and the wisdom of the earth. You are the partner, not the commander. You are the gardener, not the god. You don't need to solve the whole mystery of your productivity tonight. You don't need to know how your life will look when the drought finally breaks, or how you will be perceived by those who want fruit from you now. You only need to know that you are here, that you are breathing, and that the new you is already building depth in the quiet dark of this rest. Feel your breath moving through you, just like the wind moving through the orchard. In, out, in, out. It is a steady, rhythmic, ancient motion. You have been doing this your entire life without needing to produce a single thing of value. Your body knows how to live itself into the next moment. Your heart knows how to beat without an audience. If your mind tells you that you are being lazy for resting, or that you are vulnerable because you aren't fighting for a result, Look at that thought with the same compassion. Elara felt for the rotted pear tree. Acknowledge that you are afraid. Acknowledge that you have been holding on because you're afraid of the void. And then gently let the shears lie in the grass. Let your hands rest. There is no need to be perfect to be worthy of this rest. There is no need to have a flawless harvest to deserve this quiet. You are in the middle of building your depth, and the best way to allow that to happen is to actually rest in the middle of the silence, without trying to force the outcome. As you sink deeper into the stillness, trust that your own growth is already taking care of itself. You don't have to keep a perfect record of your milestones. You don't have to keep comparing your current state to the successful version of you that used to occupy your mind. You are simply here in the sun-drenched quiet dark of the present moment, listening to the rhythm of the night and choosing to take the next breath. That is enough. That is more than enough. You are safe enough to let the harvest wait. You are safe enough to stop calculating the outcomes and simply feel the texture of the moment you are currently in. The waiting is not an error. The drought is not a mistake. Everything is rooting together, perfectly in the quiet dark. And as the night holds you, remember that your worth is not something you are guarding, it is something you are growing, and it is already whole, even in its state of dormancy. The earth does not try to hold on to the green of summer when winter arrives, and the tree does not try to grow leaves when the wind is cold. They trust the season, and you, dear friend, can trust your own season too. The version of you that is trying to emerge is already breathing. It only needs you to be gentle with yourself, and to let go, just a little, of the part of you that is trying to force the sun. The pressure you feel is the sign of your own life asserting itself. You are not failing, you are being prepared. And in this deep, restorative sleep, you can finally set down the weight of having to be the master and simply enjoy the freedom of being the life that moves beneath the surface. You are safe, you are unbound, and tomorrow when you wake, you will be exactly as you are meant to be, deeply rooted, patient, and ready to meet the light. When Elara finally left her heavy leather apron hanging on the branch and chose to sit in the center of the drought-stricken orchard, she did not instantly possess a guarantee that her life would become effortless or that the orchard would magically bloom overnight. She did not suddenly possess a map for the years she had left or a promise that the villagers would understand her stillness. All she did was stop adding the weight of her own judgment to the natural process of her life. She stopped treating her own unfolding heart as an enemy to be defeated. As you lie here, your body sinking deeper into the soft support of your bed, consider how much of your own exhaustion comes not from the natural transitions of your life, but from the resistance to them. Why do we hold on to the forcing so tightly? Why do we insist on commanding our own growth, even when the season clearly calls for dormancy, even when it is causing us actual pain to keep pulling on our own stems? In the quiet of this room, with the night air gently rising and falling in your chest, we can look at the mind with profound compassion. The mind does not create this frantic resistance because it wants to harm you. It does it because it is terrified of the void. From a very young age, we are taught that being productive, someone who is always visible, always achieving, always in a state of bloom, is the same thing as being safe. We are handed a rigid map for how our progress should look, how we should act, and how quickly we should arrive at our goals. And when life, in its wild and unpredictable wisdom, nudges us toward a season of quiet, or when we naturally need a period of rest that doesn't fit the schedule of the world, the mind begins to panic. It believes that if it just resists the stillness enough, if it just forces itself to keep moving, it can somehow protect itself from the scary, empty space of waiting. Think about how many nights you have laid awake just like this, treating your fear of rest as if it were a protective wall. We replay the past, analyzing why we aren't the gardener we used to be, or why we aren't further along than we are. We try to fix the self through shame, believing that if we judge our lack of progress harshly enough, we can shame ourselves into blooming. We believe that if we just monitor our performance, if we just keep pulling on the stalks of our own identity, we will finally be allowed to be happy. But this need to remain in a constant state of growth is an illusion. It is the hermit pacing the grove, terrified of a quiet season that has no interest in destroying her, while her own spirit withers from the neglect of her own harshness. When we feel that we are vulnerable, we often try to fix ourselves through self-judgment. Have you noticed this heavy pattern? We look at the milestones we expected to reach, or the versions of ourselves we thought we would be by now, and we turn that observation into a weapon against our own hearts. We tell ourselves that we are failing because we are quiet. We desperately need the approval of the world to validate our existence. And when we feel we have drifted from the schedule of who we are supposed to be, we punish ourselves. We somehow believe that self-judgment is the fertilizer required for growth. We think that if we hate our current state enough, we can force ourselves into a harvest. But shame has never bloomed a single flower. Shame is simply the frantic gripping of the old expectations. It creates noise. It creates cold sweat. It keeps the mind spinning in circles, but it does not nourish our growth. It only exhausts the soul. Over time, if we are not careful, we can even turn this pain of transition into an identity. We become so used to the feeling of being behind that it becomes our defining story. We start to introduce ourselves to the quiet spaces of our own minds as the one who is struggling, the one who is missing out, the one who doesn't know how to catch up. We build a heavy armor out of our own resistance, believing that if we expect nothing but difficulty, we can never be surprised by our own rhythm. But Buddhist wisdom offers a radically different way to meet this pain. It invites us to look very closely at what is actually happening in the present moment, and to separate the reality of life from the terrifying stories the mind is telling us about who we are. This is the teaching of the first and second pain. The first pain is simply what life brings. It is the shifting of the seasons. It is the undeniable ache of needing to rest when you want to be working. It is the simple, honest discomfort of being in the middle of a waiting period you didn't ask for, or a developmental phase that feels invisible. The Buddha never taught that we could magically erase the first pain. To be human is to encounter the natural friction of cycles. We cannot control the fact that we are in a season of soil. But the second pain, the heavy, suffocating panic that steals your sleep, that is what the mind adds to the first. The second pain is the story that says, because I am not blooming, I am failing. The second pain is the frantic voice that screams, I am falling behind, and therefore I am losing my place. The second pain is the tight gripping of the old schedule, the desperate, angry pacing at the orchard gate, the shame, the comparison, and the resistance to reality. We cannot always control the first pain. We cannot always stop the seasons from changing. But, dear friend, we have a profound, beautiful choice about whether or not to feed the second. You do not have to fight the seasons. You only have to allow the soil to breathe. When you realize this, the very definition of peace begins to change. We spend so much of our lives believing that peace is the absence of difficulty. We tell ourselves, I will finally be peaceful when I am ahead, when I am no longer confused, when I have successfully harvested the fruits of my labor and everything is predictable again. But if your peace is entirely dependent on being in a constant state of visible growth, it will always be fragile. It will always be a hostage to the next cycle. True peace, the deep, abiding stillness that Ilara found when she finally sat by the rotted tree and stopped fighting her own heart, is not the absence of difficulty. Peace is a fundamentally different relationship with difficulty. It is the quiet courage to sit in the middle of your own dormant season and say to yourself, I do not know exactly when I will bloom again, But I am going to stop fighting the soil. I am going to trust that the life underneath is strong enough to root, even if I have to endure the quiet for a while. As you breathe right now, feel the physical difference between resistance and release. Resistance is tight. It lives in the clenched jaw, the raised shoulders, the shallow, rapid breath in the top of the chest. Resistance is the body bracing for a change that has already happened, but release is heavy. Release is the soft sinking of your hips into the mattress. Release is the relaxing of the belly. Release is the slow, full breath that fills the lungs and leaves without being pushed. You can value your hard work without being trapped by the need for constant results. You can appreciate your ambition without demanding that it never rest. You can want to be successful while still finding a way to rest in the middle of your own cycles. The schedule you have been worshipping is a phantom. It was created by a busy, anxious mind that fears the unknown. But the earth does not know about this fear. The soil does not panic because the sprout hasn't appeared yet. The natural world operates on a completely different rhythm, a rhythm of profound, innate trust. You belong to that natural world. Your life has its own seasons, its own weather, its own growth. When you stop treating every anxious thought as a command, you create a space inside yourself. In that space, you realize that not every feeling of being behind requires an immediate solution. Sometimes the mind just produces fear the way the grove produces leaves in spring. You do not have to grab a trowel and try to wrestle the fear out of the ground. You can just lie on the bank, breathe, and watch the world continue its journey. If your mind is telling you right now that you have wasted time, or that you are too late to start a new season, gently recognize that this is just the second pain. It is just a story. It is the echo of a society that demands you remain a static flower, bouncing around inside your tired head. You do not need to argue with the story. You do not need to aggressively fight the thought. Just whisper to it, "I see you, but I do not have to follow you into the grove tonight." What if you stopped trying to force your own growth tonight? What if you decided that just for these few hours, the project of blooming is on hold? You are not a failure to be fixed. You are not a broken tree requiring heavy chemicals. You are a living, breathing being, watching the seasons of your own life flow toward the harvest. In a moment, we will explore how to carry this gentle awareness out of the quiet night and into the bright, noisy reality of your everyday life. We will see what it looks like to let the soil breathe while you are awake, while you are interacting with others, and while you are moving through the modern world. But for now, simply let your body practice this surrender. Feel the bed rising up to hold you. You do not have to hold yourself up. Feel the dark, quiet room wrapping around you like a soft, heavy blanket. You are safe from the rushing world. Take a slow breath in, gathering any lingering need to be a finished product, and as you breathe out, let it spill away into the dark, silent air. The night can hold it. The night is vast. You are perfectly on time. You have always been perfectly on time. Rest in that deep, quiet current and let yourself be held. Tomorrow, the quiet of this dark room will eventually be replaced by the bright, demanding light of morning. The world will wake up, and with it, the noise will return. The world is built on gates. It runs on schedules, expectations, and the constant buzzing demand for vigilance. You will step out of this bed and back into a society that celebrates the frantic guarding of the past. A society that points to the crashing waterfall of over-analyzing and calls it progress. How do we carry the quiet wisdom of the soil into such a loud and rushing world? How do we put down the trowel when everyone around us is obsessively patrolling their own lives for signs of their progress, terrified that they are falling behind? We do it by realizing that peace is not a grand final destination we arrive at once and for all. Peace is practiced in small moments. It is a quiet, continuous choice to stop adding the second pain to the first. Think of the moment you wake up and reach for your phone. In the soft light of morning, before you have even taken a deep breath, you open a screen and are flooded with the curated gardens of other people's lives. You see their flowers, their vibrant blooms, their seemingly perfect paths, and instantly the modern alarm clock begins to ring. The heavy, familiar ache settles in your chest, the feeling that you are behind in life, that your growth is stagnant, that you are missing the beauty that everyone else was handed. In that exact moment, you have a choice. The first pain is the natural vulnerability of being human, the simple fact that you are still cultivating your path. But the second pain is the thought that says, I am a failure because my garden does not look like theirs yet. You do not have to believe that thought. Not every thought deserves obedience. You can notice the panic rising, and you can gently set the phone face down, that is putting down the trowel. You can take one slow breath and remind yourself that their garden is not your garden, and their bloom has absolutely nothing to do with the quiet, beautiful unfolding of your own roots. Perhaps your struggle is not with a career or a milestone, but with a heart. Maybe you know the quiet, suffocating anxiety of waiting for a text, checking your phone for reassurance every few minutes. You feel the space between you and another person, and the uncertainty of that space terrifies you. The mind tries to build a bridge of control. We overanalyze the subtext of a message. We try to manage the other person's feelings. We cling desperately to the connection, hoping that if we just hold on tight enough, we will not be abandoned. But you can care deeply without gripping tightly. When you find yourself obsessing over a relationship, terrified of the uncertainty, remember Kenji in the bamboo grove. You cannot force someone else's growth, and you cannot force connection through frantic labor. When the fear of being left behind or forgotten rises up in your throat, you can choose to sit back. You can leave the trowel in the dirt. Let the other person have their own weather. Let the relationship breathe. True connection does not require you to aggressively patrol the perimeter of every interaction. It is found when both people trust the ground they share enough to just exist side by side. And what about the days when you are carrying a heavy sadness, yet you feel you must hide it? So many of us know the exhaustion of pretending to be okay, of smiling while feeling incredibly heavy inside. We walk through the grocery store, the office, the family gathering, wearing a mask of perfect composure, terrified that if anyone saw our dormancy, they would judge us. We are so afraid of looking like we are stuck that we spend all our energy defending an illusion. The next time someone asks how you are, or demands something of your time when your cup is entirely empty, remember that a breath before answering is a form of wisdom. You do not have to rush to fix their discomfort. You do not have to instantly produce a happy response to prove you are functioning well. You can take a breath. You can allow there to be a pause. You can be honest about your fatigue, or you can simply protect your energy with a gentle, unhurried boundary. You are allowed to be a person who is still rooting. You are allowed to be in the middle of your own cycle, even if the world around you is screaming for a harvest. There will also be days when you look at your life and feel a crushing wave of guilt, simply because you are tired. We have been conditioned to believe that rest is a reward we must achieve. We think we must empty our to-do lists, solve all our problems, and secure our entire future before we are allowed to sit on the couch and do nothing. When we do try to rest, the mind punishes us with visions of all the things we should be guarding. Wanting rest, but feeling guilty for resting, is one of the heaviest burdens of the modern heart. But listen closely to this truth. You can rest without earning it. The ancient earth does not earn the right to sleep in winter. The deep oak tree does not earn the right to grow slowly in the shade. Rest is not a prize for the hyperproductive. It is a fundamental requirement for a living, breathing soul. When the guilt of resting creeps into your mind, recognize it as just another weed. It is just the old frantic mind trying to convince you that you are still trapped in the harvest cycle. Tell the guilt, I hear you, but I am setting the trowel down today. Allow your body to be heavy. Allow your afternoon to be unproductive. Your worth is not determined by how much you produce, but by your capacity to simply be present. And then there are the nights, perhaps very much like tonight, when the lights go out and the mind immediately begins replaying a mistake. You stare at the ceiling, and your brain plays a film of a choice you wish you could undo, or a path you fear you should have taken but didn't. The mind drags the past into the present and beats you with it, trying to fix the self through shame. When this happens, remind yourself that not every feeling is a command. Just because your body feels a sudden flush of shame or a spike of anxiety does not mean there is an actual emergency happening in your bedroom. It is just an old echo. It is the sound of the wind rattling a gate that was never actually locked. You do not have to obey the anxiety. You do not have to get out of bed and mentally pace the perimeter of a life that is already safe. You can simply notice the feeling, like a drop of water gathering on a leaf. Watch the memory swell. Do not push it away, and do not judge yourself for remembering it. Just watch it, and then let it fall. Let it drop into the soil and nourish the roots of your next season. Applying this ancient wisdom to your modern life does not mean your life will suddenly become perfect. The shadows will still lengthen. There will still be moments of profound uncertainty. There will be days when you forget everything we have talked about tonight. Days when you pick up the trowel and pace the grove until your feet bleed. And when that happens, the most important practice of all is forgiveness. Buddhist wisdom teaches us that waking up is not something we do. Once it is something we do 1,000 times a day. Every time you realize you are clutching the trowel, you have woken up. Every time you catch yourself punishing your own heart for being in a season of roots, you have woken up. You do not need to be angry with yourself for forgetting. You simply open your hands. Let the tool lie on the grass, and let your own heart return to the earth. You can let go without disappearing. You can surrender your desperate need for a guaranteed outcome without losing your connection to the beauty of your own unfolding life. In fact, it is only when we stop fighting the seasons that we can finally feel the deep, steady peace that has been waiting for us all along. As you lie here now, let this practice begin tonight. Let it begin in this very breath. If your mind tells you that you are not doing a good enough job at resting, notice the irony of that thought. Notice how the mind tries to turn even peace into a competition, a milestone you are failing to reach. Smile gently at that busy, exhausted part of your mind. It is only trying to protect you. It just doesn't know how to trust the soil. You can be the gentle gardener to your own anxious thoughts. You can say to them, "It is okay. We do not have to force the bamboo tonight. We are safe." Feel the space around you. The room is quiet. The demands of the day have completely faded into the distance. The emails, the texts, the expectations of others, the imaginary finish lines, they are all outside this room, and the door is closed. You are entirely safe to just be the breathing body on this bed. In a few moments, we will begin our final descent into sleep. We will let all the words, all the stories, and all the teachings dissolve into the dark, quiet space of rest. You will not need to hold on to any of this. The wisdom has already settled into your bones. The trowel has already been left on the ground. Just allow yourself to float, trusting that the heavy, peaceful air knows exactly how to hold you. The night has deepened around you. The world outside your window has finally surrendered its busy rushing, folding itself into the quiet dark. The streets have quieted, the houses are still, and the endless, loud demands of the day have lost their shape. In this room, bathed in the faint silvery light of the moon, there is only the soft, steady rhythm of your breathing. The words we have shared tonight are beginning to fade. They have done their work. You do not need to memorize them, and you do not need to hold on to them. The wisdom of the soil, the understanding that your growth is not a failure, but a homecoming is already settling into your bones, sinking into the quiet spaces of your heart, where it will remain, waiting for you whenever you need it. You can stop trying to figure it all out now. The rusted trowel of your old striving has no power here. In the deep, silent hours of the night, there is no behind and there is no ahead. There is only this exact moment holding you completely safe. Feel the impossible heaviness of your own body, sinking beautifully into the mattress. Imagine that your bones are like smooth, ancient stones that have finally been allowed to settle at the bottom of a deep, quiet pool. They are not fighting the current. They are not trying to float. They are simply resting on the soft, sandy bottom, cradled by the earth. Let that heavy, comfortable sensation begin in your feet. Notice how they simply fall away, the tension draining out of them, leaving them completely relaxed. Feel that heavy warmth moving slowly up through your legs, releasing the knees, softening the thighs, allowing your hips to sink entirely into the support beneath you. You are anchored. You are grounded. You do not have to hold yourself up anymore. Feel the softening travel up through your spine, relaxing every muscle in your back. The armor you wore today is falling away, piece by piece, unneeded in the safety of this dark room. Let your shoulders drop away from your ears. They have been carrying the imaginary weight of your own harvest for so long, but tonight you have set that trowel down on the garden path. It is far away from you now. Feel your arms become heavy, your hands resting open, the fingers curling naturally, grasping nothing. Let your jaw part just a fraction. Let your tongue soften. Let the tiny muscles around your eyes smooth out, releasing the need to track your progress, releasing the need to perform, releasing the need to force the bloom before the season is ready. Your body knows exactly how to rest when the mind stops forcing it to maintain a schedule. Breathe in the cool night air. Let it fill you with a spacious, gentle quiet. And as you breathe out, imagine that you are that small wooden boat, gliding effortlessly on the deep, dark water. The frantic pacing in the orchard is over. The heavy demand of who you should be has been left behind. The oars are resting inside the boat. There is only the sound of the water, moving slowly, eternally, carrying you with perfect grace. Imagine looking up from the boat into the vast open night sky. The shadows have completely cleared. Above you is a canopy of 10,000 stars, brilliant and still, reflecting their silver light on the surface of the river. The stars do not rush. The moon does not hurry its path across the dark canvas of the sky. They simply exist, beautifully and perfectly, exactly where they are meant to be. And so are you. You are a part of this vast, unhurried nature. Your life is not a mistake. Your waiting is not a failure. You have always been unfolding exactly as you were meant to, learning the lessons that your unique soul needed to learn, walking the path that was carved specifically for your feet. If a stray thought wanders into your mind, a lingering worry, a quiet fear, a ghost of the gardener trying to remind you of who you should be, do not fight it. Do not let it startle you. Just look at it with the gentle, loving eyes of the river. Watch that thought distill into a single drop of water. Watch it gather on the soft green moss in the moonlight. Watch it swell and let it fall, plink. Watch it land in the smooth granite bowl. Watch it wash over the edge and join the river, disappearing into the current, carried away without you having to do a single thing. Listen to the silence that follows the drop. That silence is your true home. You have been pulling on your own stems for so long, dear friend. You have been searching for a place where you could finally feel safe, a place where the ticking clock of your own expectations would stop, a place where you could finally rest. But that place was never a destination in the future. It was never a milestone you had to cross. It was never a final harvest you had to achieve. It was right here. It was always right here, waiting for you beneath the layers. You are already home. You do not need to earn this sleep. You do not need to prove your worth to the night. The dark room embraces you unconditionally, exactly as you are, with all your beautiful vulnerabilities, all your unfinished chapters, all your quiet questions. Let the breath breathe itself. Inhale the peace of the deep river. Exhale the need to be a finished thing. Inhale the quiet of the night. Exhale the illusion of needing to be in bloom right now. You are perfectly safe. You are perfectly whole. You are perfectly on time. Drift now. Drift on the gentle current of your own breathing. Let the water carry you away from the waking world, away from the thinking mind, down into the soft velvet darkness of deep restorative sleep. The river knows the way. The deep water has caught the hull. You are being held by something so much vaster than your goals. There is nothing left to do. There is nowhere left to be. There is only the beautiful, quiet surrender to the night. Let go entirely. And as you drift into the quiet, starlit dark, ask yourself one final, gentle thing. What if the life you were trying so hard to force has been waiting all along for you to simply trust the soil?